The Paragon of Man, Smoke Pit Fairy Tales Part 3, Chapter 3, Blot. I woke up to drums, flutes, and an acoustic guitar. I tried to roll out of bed, but I couldn't move. I hate when my arms fall asleep. I jerked my limbs, but something was stopping them. I felt around what I was able to with my fingers. Fuck! I was tied up. I opened my eyes to darkness. Something in my mouth muffled my scream. What the fuck happened this time? Someone removed the veil from behind my head. The sun provided no light, but I could make out what hid in the dimly lit trees. I was in the grove where the feast was to be. My limbs were tied to wooden poles to my side. 12 other Marines were imprisoned in a similar fashion to my flanks. In front of me was an unlit fire pit encircled by large gray stones. Beyond that was Lieutenant Toshi, strapped by ropes around his hands and feet to the giant spruce. He was clean-shaven and dressed in a white shroud. 2 large wolves sat menacingly beside the tree. I looked around. The rest of us were as Toshi was. Mistletoe and flowers and ribbons of red, green, and gold decorated the area. People beyond the trees were carrying torches around the grove, chanting in a low hymn. I couldn't see who was playing the instruments. What in the ever-living fuck are they doing? The torches circled a few more times before entering the tree line. The carriers were wearing long red hooded robes, crowns of mistletoe, and wooden masks bearing grotesque faces. They came to the boulders surrounding the fire pit and halted. In unison, they dipped their fires into the pit, lighting the flames, then placed the torches on the stands. The rest of the villagers appeared from the woodwork like demons in green garb. Flowery wreaths sat on their heads. One of the masked villains opened her robe to reveal a belt on an otherwise nude body. Her skin was whiter than milk. Her bush would have impressed Moses. She drew 2 swords from the belt, raised them over her head, and clashed them together. With her hands and face to the night sky, she spoke boldly to the heavens. I hadn't figured out what was going on yet. I didn't think I could be in any more of a world of shit. As she spoke, Toshi tried in vain to pull free from his chains. Ignoring him, the 4 other masked fiends withdrew into the wood and returned with a large iron cauldron that they had placed over the fire. A cauldron! Yeah, okay, alright, yeah, that's fucking great. I fight the Russians, the world ends, and I get kidnapped by fucking heathens, all on the same deployment. Great. The pot's contents started to steam. The woman with the swords used them to stir the brew. She then faced the rest of the villagers and gave a long-winded speech. I wasn't sure I would want to know what she was saying, even if I could speak Norwegian. Goddamn fucking frost gooks. The high priestess switched to speaking English.
And we all give our extreme gratitude to Lieutenant Toshi and his men for bringing us such marvelous gifts of vehicles, weapons, clothing, and technology.
Toshi thrashed. I could hear his screams through his gag. The red-dressed woman with the burning orange crotch produced a hollowed ram's horn. Another woman poured mead into it. They looked to the sky, called a prayer, and removed their masks. Then, one by one, the entire village took a drink. When they were done, one of the women brought forth a rather large snake. They all put their hands on the animal and sang something evil in tune with the music playing from behind. Then the head priestess took a dagger and slit open the snake from throat to tail. Another woman held a decorated bowl under the serpent to collect its blood. That's when I felt small, cold hands grab my waist. I tried to turn to see who it was. Laughlin walked around to my front, as naked as she was the night before. She wrapped her hands around my...
Hey everybody, what's up? Hey, real quick, so I gotta cut out and edit a bit of this chapter because it violates all of YouTube's user guidelines and safety policies. If you want the uncut version, you can get this book on Audible, or if you want the chapters early as they come out, as I get done with them, they are also unedited over on Patreon. All right, so for context, what you're missing the nitty-gritty on, Toshi gets cannibalized, everyone else gets sexually assaulted, and then the villagers have an incest blood orgy. All right, back to the chapter.
I don't know when I passed out, but I woke with the sun slightly shining through the clouds, still tied to the posts. The last embers of the fire cackled, mocking me. The villagers in the cauldron were gone. It was just me, 11 other bound and gagged Marines, and the wind. No one came that day to retrieve us. I guess they were too hungover from fucking themselves drunk with the blood of another human being. Maybe we were left as a living sacrifice to the animals. That might be about. Though it was day, the village couldn't be seen from where we were in the grove. I tried to console myself. You've done more fucked up shit than this before. You've done shit almost as fucked up as last night. I mean, maybe not on that big of a scale. The night started to spread her blanket over the sky. 2 large ravens landed on the pole I was tied to on the right. I looked at their black eyes, and they looked back into mine as if they could see into my soul. They then started to pluck at the rope my hand was bound with. When I could move my right arm freely, the ravens disappeared into the sky. I shook my arm out, trying to get the blood back in it. I reached over and untied my left hand. Then, with no balance, I fell to the dirt. After a moment, I untied my legs. Then, one by one, the other Marines. The 12 of us huddled together for warmth.
All right, so what's the plan?
Doc asked. Fuck if I know. I looked to see who was present. Fowler, Correa, Ivy, Velica, Rhodes, Hill, Gino, Walks, Anderson, Simon, Doc, and me. Wait till it's dark. Low crawl to the trucks, gear up, and fucking put these assholes' heads on spikes? The other 11 nodded in approval.
Which way are the trucks?
Correa asked. No idea. All I know is that we're in the center of the village. I rubbed the skin on my arms, trying to warm them.
What if they've taken all of our gear already?
Rhodas asked. Then we'll improvise. We'll all flood into the first house and take what we can use from there. Unless there's a house party, they won't be able to take all of us.
What do you think happened to the rest of the Marines?
Hill wondered aloud. I shrugged. We stayed in the grove until the air was black. Staying low, we left the tree line and wrapped around the village until we found a good spot to jump the wall. When we got to the vehicles, I whispered, "Hey, get what you can. Meet back behind the trucks in 5 minutes." Doc, Correa, Fowler, and I found our cargo truck and climbed in the back. All of our gear was still there. Fowler wondered,
why didn't they take anything?
Why would they need to? They probably have the rest of the Marines in cells somewhere. Who's going to take the shit?
I pulled a uniform out of my Alice pack. I didn't have any warming layers or boots, but anything was better than nothing. I hung my axe from my belt and wrapped Eclair's olive drab American flag bandana around my head. The villagers hadn't even touched our gear. We put every round of ammunition into our packs, grabbed their weapons, and headed to the rally point. I wasn't the only one who didn't find footwear.
Everyone got a weapon?
The Marines nodded.
Alright, we're gonna do this like Fallujah.
Fowler, being the only one of us old enough to have been there, laid out the basic course of action for the village. We crept along the city wall, making sure not to silhouette ourselves over the top. Outside the first house, we crawled over the gate and stacked up behind a window. Doc and I had our tomahawks out. We didn't know what the villagers were packing, so we tried to be quiet. Doc peered through the glass and gave me a nod. I pushed the window open and crawled through. When the first room was cleared, the other 10 followed in. We lurked through the house like malicious spirits coming to haunt. When I got to the master bedroom, I found the owners comfortably lulled away in dreamland. I placed my hand just above the man's forehead and raised my axe. With one finger, I tapped his face until his eyes emerged from behind their lids. When he saw me, he opened his mouth to scream. I dug the blade through his mouth to the base of his skull. The wife awoke and stared at me in horror, frozen from shock. I axed her face into a meaty, red bowl. I opened their closet, searching for anything useful. Nothing. When I got back downstairs, the Marines were raiding the kitchen. We hadn't eaten anything in a day, and I shoved a slice of bread in my mouth. All right, guys, let's get going. We snuck out the back door and single-filed across the yard to the barn. Voices whispered under a single light from inside. We stacked up by the door. Fowler and Correa led the line. Creeping in, they saw a couple of teenagers penetrating each other on the hay-layered ground. Fowler promptly and quietly stabbed them to death. Fowler came out with his dagger still drawn. His eyes were wide and his head low.
You guys need to see what's in there.
We walked into the barn. Correa stood in too much shock to do anything but shake. I looked up. The rest of the regiment was impaled on meat hooks hanging from the walls. My jaw dropped. I searched my mind for any words to say in response. All I could manage was blurted stuttering. I looked at Doc and pointed to the neatly aligned, skinned comrades hanging from the barn. The village had left the Marines' faces and hair intact. Everything below the neck was meat. Their guts had been pulled out, leaving a bloody cavity in the wake. Their hands were tied together over their heads and fastened to hooks, and their feet were gone. Their cold, dead eyes stared at us. No one produced words, only disturbed whispers and tears. After a few minutes, Ivy asked,
What do we do?
Cut them down?
No. I was on the brink of mental collapse, trying to force shock and sorrow into rage. Burn the barn.
What?
Ambush them. Set the barn on fire. When the villagers come out, kill them. Fowler looked back to the Marines on the wall.
Just like that? Leave them here?
They'll have a warrior's cremation instead of getting fucking cannibalized by these heathens. The fires of hell will purge their souls clean. Doc gave me a concerned look.
Where'd that come from?
No idea. I looked around at the Marines. Doc, you and me will set up the fire. Fowler, take the rest of the Marines and set up a good kill zone. We'll light up in 10 minutes. Fowler stared at me for a moment, then motioned the rest of the men to follow him outside. Doc and I put together a pile of straw towards the back of the barn, making sure to leave the doors clear so if anyone charged in, they'd be trapped. A minute before we were supposed to start the fire, Doc and I lit cigarettes. I wanted to say something for the Marines on the walls, but I couldn't form words, even in my mind. My sorrow was making its change to blinding rage. We finished the smokes and flicked them into the pile of hay. The straws started to smoke and crackle. We waited there until the fire had spread to the wall. We snuck out the back of the barn and hid between the fence and the shed. The flames spread to the roof. The villagers started shouting from across the grove in the center of the town. We stayed put until we heard the guns. We got up and ran towards the sound of fire, linking up with the other 10 Marines who were set up in the grove. When we arrived, 15 of the villagers laid sprawled out across the ground. No one else came, and there was silence.
I don't like silence.
Correa said, looking over his sights. Bullets ripped over our head.
They're firing back!
Ivy shouted.
Yeah, no shit.
We shot back at the muzzle flashes. Most were coming through the windows and buildings across the way. More and more guns appeared, slinging lead. A few of the brave ones charged us, only to end up in the dirt with more holes than they had come with. The exchange continued for about half an hour. We used the cover of the trees in the grove to move around without being seen. We moved deeper in and set up a perimeter.
They're only shooting at us when we fire first.
Maybe they're low on ammo?
Or they don't want to hurt their little fucking holy place more than they need to.
So what's the plan? We can't stay in here. Eventually the sun's going to come up, and we'll be rooted out. There's probably about 500 of them and 12 of us. Eventually they're going to fucking kamikaze us, and we don't have the ammo to ward off that.
Fowler mulled that over for a minute.
We should have used the trucks for this, or at least pulled the crew-served weapons off. We'll set up a diversion on the north end of the grove, then 4 of us will run out to the southeast, circle back around. Grab a couple of trucks with 50 cals, come back, grab the rest of the Marines. Then we'll pull back to the trucks and light this village the fuck up from the outside.
Fowler looked around.
Ivy, Rhodes, Hill, come with me. The rest of you, set up and start firing from the north end of the tree line. We'll be back for you guys in a few minutes.
We split up and moved our positions. But before we could get set up, we heard machine gun fire from the south end. The 4 Marines came back bolting towards us. Fowler sprinted straight past our position.
They got the trucks, come on!
He waved in passing. We picked up and darted after. The villagers in the truck swung around the grove firing. We kept running until we got to the far side of the city walls. We jumped over and kept moving downhill. The harbor!
What?
I pointed west to the sea. The harbor, there's boats there. If we run into the plains, we're gonna get gunned down.
All right, let's go.
Fowler led us to the wooden docks. The villagers in the trucks kept heading north. There wasn't a soul guarding the docks.
Which one do we take?
I don't fucking know anything about sailing.
Doc, you're a sailor.
Hank, not the fuck right now.
I looked over the vessels available. Those ones on the end have sails and engines. We ran down to the very last boat on the creaky wooden boards and hopped on. I cut the lines and Hill started the engine. The 60-foot boat dragged backwards. Hill turned the wheel, faced it towards the open ocean, and gunned it. A few minutes later, the village erupted in gunfire aimed towards us. Luckily, we were out of range as we sailed west into the black ocean night.
All right, everybody, thanks for listening to Chapter 3 of The Paragon of Man. Smoke But Fairy Tales Part 3. Yeah, there we go. All right, so in this episode, we had Chuck LaVoki playing Doc, Eric Pickle playing Fowler, Bino Black playing Rhodas, Nick Schulte playing Hill, Hollis Joe McCollum playing Artacia, Jon Q, Haskell playing Ivy, and Matt Kupcikevicious playing Correa. I would like to thank all of you for listening, and then I would also like to thank all of my Patreon supporters whose names I think should be over here. I'm going to try to put them on this side of the video, which is why I'm going to put my head over here to remind myself later that the words go here. So thank you, Patreon people. Also, thank you everyone who's gotten a war chest, which is either the first 6 of these novels in a custom painted ammo can with stickers and cards and a patch, or the second 6. Last 6, last half, kind of the same deal, or the war crate, which is all of them. And yeah, they're listed over here as well. All right, well, make sure to tune in for next week. Thank you all again for listening, and if this chapter's got bloopers, they're here. This chapter should have bloopers. All right, you have a good one. Ciao.
Chapter 3. Oh yeah, this is after all the bullshit happened.
I was tied up. I swear to Christ, we're not doing the phone blow-up thing today. Go get on the couch, baby. Couch. Good girl.
This is the IV script for Chapter 3 of Book 3 in the Smoke Pit Fairy Tales. Yeah, I'm back. You're welcome. I know y'all missed me.
Another woman held a decorative bowl. Oh, it's not even decorative. It's decorated. I'm using the wrong fucking word. Thanks, Strip. Scully, get on the couch.
Test. 1, 2, 3. Test.
5 of them were the other dollars. 5 of the other dollars. I tried to buck off Lawson took a second swig at me. Swig.